Here. And Commissioner Villanueva.
Here.
Oh, and we are all met, including the chair. Let that be noted. The next item is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion and a second?
So
Move
moved.
to approve.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Is there any objection to approval of the agenda? All right, the agenda is approved. Next, the minutes of the October 4th commission meeting. Is there a motion and a second for approval?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, is there any objection to approving the minutes of the October 4th meeting? Not so, those minutes are approved. Onto the substantive portion of the meeting. Item number 4, Jeremy, the annual report.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Commissioners, good morning. I'm very pleased to present to you the Commission's annual report. Under statute, we submit this every year to the legislature and to the governor. It's one of the things the Ethics Commission has to do. And what you have before you is obviously a draft with a few placeholders that will be filled in the very last days of December before we submit this. And to just kind of give you some highlights from 2024, we made a lot of progress this year. Again, the commission received an unmodified opinion. It's our 5th unmodified opinion, a clean bill of health on the financial statement. And Wendy and Sharon did a lot of work to make sure that happened. And so we're very proud of that. We're up to 10 FTE this year, and we have no vacancies right now. We were able to create and onboard a new attorney position. That's a position at the kind of a very entry-level attorney position that allows us to recruit out of our summer associate classes, and we've had 5 summers of summer law associates, and that's something I'm very proud of. I think we're creating a pipeline of young attorneys that are interested in government ethics work, and I hope that a few of them will, in years to come back and run this agency. So that's another success. We're up to we've grown a lot since the beginning, and we submitted a budget request for just south of $2 million and for an additional FTE, and that's kind of just reflects the commission's growth and the increasing workload that we face as we kind of make steps to being able to fulfill our constitutional and statutory mandate. This year, I also did something structural, which I was able to speak with you about in the beginning of the year. We divisionalized the agency. So we now have a kind of divisional structure where there's an administrative services division, there's an enforcement division, and there's a compliance division. And staff are kind of working in each of those 3 columns. And I think that makes the organization of the commission much more rational, and we're able to achieve more. Across our work, we did some really good work this year. You'll see some really quality advisory opinions in this annual report. You'll see some of the progress that we made in handling the administrative docket. And in this year, we also created a new kind of process and mechanism around the commission's exercise of its discretionary power to file civil enforcement actions. We launched an informal complaint portal where we receive submissions from the public, and since we launched that in early January, that portal has received about 270 submissions, and we look through those. We make assessments, and what we determine to be serious breaches, we bring before you for the purposes of a civil action. And we did some good work in the courts this year as well. We were able to enforce our state's campaign finance disclosure laws, and enforced what I would consider to be a dark money pact. We forced them to register and disclose their donors prior to the November election. And so I count that as a major success of this body. And it took a lot of work to get there. So commissioners, that's a kind of review of the highlights of 2024 and all the work that we've done to kind of further consolidate this government agency. And I guess I'll just close with previewing some of the legislative priorities that are part of this annual report. So this is part and parcel of the purpose of this document. Each year we submit to the governor and the legislature what the commission is thinking in terms of legislative reform. And this has been our program in years past to highlight statutes that we think could be completely replaced. This year we're taking a different tact. We've highlighted really two areas to focus on for the upcoming session. The first is with respect to our state's campaign finance reporting law. And this commission kind of points to legislative efforts that Senator Wirth has pursued in the past with respect to bills to solidify the Campaign Reporting Act. And in this annual report, the commission kind of gives its full-throated support to those efforts and provides a memorandum that in depth explains the necessity of each of those amendments that have been in Senator Wirth's previous bills, and also addresses some new lessons that we've learned since the last 60-day session with respect to how members spend their campaign funds. So next, the other legislative project that we're really focused on at the moment is with respect to the Lobbyist Regulation Act. And this is a bit of work that Amelia has done a lot of work on in terms of researching and trying to target the most incremental and the most efficient reforms that we can make to the Lobbyist Regulation Act in the hope of crafting a small bill that actually has a chance of passage. And I'll turn it over to Amelia to make a few remarks about that.
Thanks, Jeremy. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great.
No.
Yeah, we've been spending the last few weeks reviewing the LRA, and it has become very apparent that there are major gaps. And as Jeremy mentioned, a few of us were in California this past week at the Council on Government Ethics Laws, and this further confirmed that New Mexico is really behind the ball in terms of where we're at with our legislation for lobbyist disclosure. And so we've identified a few gaps that I think are the most efficient in terms of making incremental progress. The first is the LRA, as it stands now, does not require true source of expenditures to be disclosed. And so the way that really plays out in practice is that you'll see lobbyists creating LLCs, and when they disclose who their employers are, they'll disclose the LLC as opposed to the true source of their clients. The second is that the LRA does not require beneficiaries to be disclosed. So Judge Klingman, let's say I take you out to dinner, I would not have to disclose as a lobbyist that I was taking you out to dinner, that you were the beneficiary. And then third, the LRA does not require any sort of disclosure on the subject matter of the lobbying efforts. And so Judge Klingman, as we're out to dinner, if we're talking about HB 118, there'd be no requirement for me to disclose that. And so the solutions that we're crafting are aimed at closing those three gaps. And so one would be an introduction of a new definition, a beneficial client. This is modeled after New York. We were fortunate to actually hear from New York while we were out in California, which was really, really helpful. This would really get at disclosing the true source of the expenditure. The second is requiring the disclosure of beneficiaries. And then the third solution would be requiring a purpose statement that would be required for each expenditure. So the lobbyists would have to identify the specific legislation that they're lobbying on behalf of and their position on it. And again, this is modeled after Colorado. Again, this was legislation or these were reforms that we actually were able to hear about in person. And so the conference was really helpful. And it gives us confidence that we think these reforms will be successful and are kind of pushing us in the right direction. Though we recognize it isn't a comprehensive reform, and these are just the small steps that we think will make the most progress in this upcoming year.
Okay, thank you, Amelia. And then, Commissioners, the last legislative note that I'll make is it's kind of the holy grail and the last step to create a truly independent commission is to figure out some kind of structural way to guarantee the commission's funding, such that the commission's funding isn't always and forever dependent on annual appropriations in Section 4 of HB2. That creates a kind of a structural issue with respect to the commission's ability to year over year enforce the ethics laws with respect to those members that have the appropriations power and the governor that has the veto power. And so that's always been something that I've thought about since the very beginning, how to go about finding a kind of structural fiscal solution that guarantees the commission's independence. And it's not something I wanted to tackle initially in the initial years of kind of building this agency up, but 5 years in, I think it's time to start thinking about it. And so the last legislative note in this annual report kind of thinks about a non-reverting fund for the State Ethics Commission. And there are about 50 non-reverting funds in the statutes annotated in the Treasury. And it's an idea that I have spoken about with Senator Campos, who's the most senior member of the Senate, and he's also thinking along these lines of how to find a kind of structural a fiscal structure for the commission's independence. And so with that, commissioners and chair, you have the 2024 annual report, and upon your approval, we will update it at the end of December and send it on.
Thank you, Jeremy. Is there a motion and a second to approve the annual report as outlined?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Discussion. Let's go around the room. Commissioner Baker?
Yeah, I actually have 3 questions. Jeremy, you said you want an additional FTE. What position do you think that will be?
Chair, Commissioner Baker, it'd be a new attorney position. I think the next hire we need one more attorney, I think, to fill this out. And then if we're looking beyond that, I think we would be thinking about an investigator beyond that. But I think an attorney is the next hire.
And would that be an entry-level attorney such as Mr. Woods?
No, we have the entry-level attorney position in place. I think we're just trying to kind of create other rungs in the ladder.
All right. Second question, you said that you've restructured, so there's now an enforcement division and a compliance division. What's the difference between the two?
Okay, so the enforcement division is what they do is civil litigation and administrative complaints. The compliance division mainly handles every other legal aspect of the agency, prominently the advisory opinions and the advisory letters. We have Verlona under the compliance division. We have OMA, IPRA. I mean, there's so many, all of the statutes that kind of shape the contours of how a government agency has to interact with the world. And this agency's compliance with those statutes fall within the compliance division. And commissioners, as you well know, it's the enforcement division is headed by the general counsel, and the compliance, who's Walker, and the compliance division is headed by the chief compliance counsel, who is KC.
Thank you. My third question, I'm not quite sure how reverting and non-reverting funds work. Is non-reverting mean if we don't spend it? I guess reverting will be if we don't spend it, we lose it. and non-reverting is if we don't spend it, we keep it?
That's correct. So traditionally, state agencies' funds revert to the Treasury at the end of the fiscal year, any unspent funds. A few agencies have the ability to keep certain revenue in accounts that do not revert to the general fund at the end of the fiscal year. And a non-reverting fund is one way of thinking about kind of fiscal independence. Another way of thinking about fiscal independence is a source of revenue that's not general fund appropriations. So there are kind of two pieces to thinking about fiscal independence, but a non-reverting fund allows the receipt of revenue, whether it be general fund revenue or other sources of revenue, whether appropriated by the legislature or not. I mean, non-reverting funds also allow the receipt of third-party grant funds, and it's just it would be an account that the commission would be able to budget from for durations that exceed one fiscal year.
Well, let me follow up. This year, how much is going to revert to the state?
Ooh, I wish Wendy were here to help me answer that. We just at the end of fiscal year 24, I believe we reverted around $50,000. That's normally the amount that we revert.
Is $50,000 really enough money to do anything that you cannot already do?
Well, no, I mean, we do a good job at pairing budgeted expenditure amounts with received appropriations. And, we're certainly not one of those agencies that reverts significant percentages of their annual budget. We run pretty lean, but we always are reverting some funds because we have money tied up in contracts that we have to have tied up in contracts in case we need it. But what a non-reverting fund does, Commissioner Baker, is it not only allows you to save the amounts that you would have otherwise reverted, it's a placeholder where you can go off and receive other kinds and sources of revenue that, and you have an incentive to go off and seek those other sources of revenue because they won't just fall into the general fund at the end of the fiscal year.
So, for example, if you successfully sue somebody and impose a penalty of $250 or $500, instead of that person writing a check to the state of New Mexico, they would write the check to the Ethics Commission?
No, it's a bit more complicated than that. So revenue, the kinds of revenue that we receive, there has to be authorization for how where that revenue goes. And so for fees or fines in administrative cases, that probably should always be structured to go into the general fund so that the commission doesn't have an incentive to or a perceived incentive to levy or to conclude in ways that enhance the commission's budget when the commission is sitting in its quasi-judicial power, when the commission is sitting as basically as executive judges. The other sources of revenue that we receive, anything we receive from a civil action that a court of law awards to the commission through a judgment or sanctions, or any settlement that the commission receives following a civil action. We already have authority, budget adjustment request authority, to bring that revenue into the commission's budget. And so that's revenue that comes in. And if it's not spent, it reverts at the end of the fiscal year. So that revenue, like any revenue that's apart from that administrative amount that I think should always go to the general fund, that would come into the commission's non-reverting fund if it
Doesn't that have the same optics problem as the other? I mean, if we file a lawsuit against the New Mexico project, for example, and there's a settlement and the New Mexico project has to reimburse us for some of our attorney's fees, couldn't the argument be made that we're simply trying to generate revenue?
Well, I don't think the optics are or I would resist that inference strongly because the administrative cases is the commission operating in its quasi-judicial power as judges. And the lawsuits are the commission operating in its kind of discretionary executive function. And I think the two are very different in terms of how the commission should think about fine revenue.
Finally, I'll just make the point that I don't think having a non-reverting fund of about $50,000 is a game changer. I would much prefer that if the commission is going to have a different source of funding, that it be independent of the legislature, and that it be something we can count on. For example, and I'll just throw this out as maybe a silly example, but 0.5% of the tax on blank.
Sure, and I think that second step is along the lines of what Senator Campos might be thinking about, but you need the non-reverting fund in order to get to that second step, or it's helpful. And Commissioner Baker, what a non-reverting fund also gets you is the ability to have a kind of parallel source of foundation money, where there's a kind of separately managed source of funding that's growing in investments, and suppose there could be disbursements into the non-reverting fund. And the existence of a non-reverting fund provides an argument for going off and seeking other kinds of foundation and grant funding that would be independent from general fund appropriations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bluestone?
Thank you, and thank you, Jeremy, and the staff for the annual report. I think it's very well done. I agree, Jeremy, with your comment earlier about the recruitment of new attorneys and your use of the summer law clerk program to provide an opportunity for folks to learn about the work of the Ethics Commission and become involved in this kind of work in the future. I think that's really good too. I don't have any questions about the annual report per se. I'm happy to approve it, but I would like to have some discussion about the legislative recommendations separately and the strategy for going forward. But I think it may be more efficient to just have comments on the annual report and then to have a separate discussion after the vote on that about the legislative strategy. But if you want to do it differently, Mr. Chair, Jeremy, I can defer to that. The only comment I would make about the non-reverting fund is that I think it offers as Jeremy said, a placeholder, an opportunity for additional funding, but it can be a double-edged sword too, because once you get a non-reverting fund set up, the legislature looks with general disfavor on other funding sources, and then can use that as a way of reducing the general fund appropriations to the agencies. So I know there are a number of them, as Jeremy referred to, but I view this more as just a procedural framework for us, but it does run a risk that we could have our general fund appropriations reduced as a result of this. But having said that, I'd rather move on and hear from others about the annual report, approve that, and then have a separate discussion, if that's all right with you, about the legislative proposals and our legislative strategy.
Thank you. Commissioner Castillo? You're muted, so
Yeah, I'm unmuting.
there you go.
myself, yeah.
There you go.
I too want to thank Jeremy and the staff. The report certainly shows the growth of the commission and the hard work that the staff puts in. So thank you. My questions too are related to the strategy and recommendations regarding what we're going to do with the legislature. So depending on how you handle that, I'll hold off on my questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Klingman?
I would first of all commend Jeremy from from my observation, the annual report seems to be well done. I was not here for most of it, but it's comprehensive and seems to answer a lot of questions. I too agree with Commissioner Baker about the permanency of the funds and funding and his concerns. It seems to me that if what we're seeking is independence, financial independence, that a non-reverting fund at $50,000 a year, looking at our general budget, is going to take decades to achieve any type of independence. I also do not like the idea of the eat what you kill. In other words, having any revenues that we generate for attorney fees, fines, etc., coming to us. That, we tried that in the judiciary for years, and I was never at all satisfied with how that worked. I think that if we're seeking financial independence, a dedicated income source is about the only way we can really go. I don't know how that would be structured, but I think that as long as we could have a dedicated source of income where we don't have to rely on annual appropriations, that would satisfy the independence requirement and free us from the session to session to session leverage that the legislature holds over us. Whether they would ever agree to such a thing, who knows? They tend not to, but the Ethics Commission is a rather unique commission, and it may, with Senator Campos and others, it may have the support to get something there. But that would be the thrust of my endeavor as far as funding issue. The other question just has to do with the lobbies, lobbyists, et cetera. I'm just not that familiar with problems that may exist or have existed. I just really don't have a position on that at all. So with those things being said, I'll go ahead and yield and allow the next speaker.
Thank you, Commissioner Klingman. Commissioner McMillan?
Thank you, Chair Lang. I had a couple of questions about the commission's legislative agenda. So if we're going to come back to that, I'll hold those questions for that time. And we just make the observation that the annual report clearly reflects that this commission has been successful in achieving its assigned responsibilities and duties. And that's the great lesson I take from the annual report. So with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes, I just want to say that the annual report really reflects that we have a commission to be proud of. I think Jeremy's done an excellent job in guiding us through the last 5 years and getting us to where we are. I also had some questions on the non-reverting funds, but I'll wait until we have further discussion.
Thank you. I would point out that in years of lobbying legislature for court budgets, a couple of things. One of which is that the legislature's primary function is to appropriate funds. And when you go to them and say, no, thanks, we'd rather we did it ourselves, that meets with about as large an uphill battle as I've ever seen. There are discrete needs which people have been able to persuade them over the years to do. I doubt that it will be I think the uphill battle is made even further uphill by the fact that we're asking them to fund an entity that essentially polices them. And not to suggest anything negative about them, but I would take a long, hard look at that if I were in that position, if I were them. I think that's maybe not a fool's errand, but I would not put a lot of hope into that particular thing happening. And the other danger is exactly what Stuart said. Great, you got 150 grand a year coming over here. That's 150 grand you don't need from us. And that can slide even further back down the hill, making that yet another effort in the hill climb that we would have created. So I think that's a really noble and great idea, but on paper, I think the practicality of getting it done is probably not worth the effort, because whenever you ask the legislature for three things, each one of them, there's a cost when you're pushing three things to the other two when you're in front of a committee on one of those. So I'd be very, very careful about prioritizing that. So with respect to the annual report, we have a motion and a second on it relative to the discussion that Stuart, you spoke of and everybody seems to be inclined to have. I think the appropriate thing is to call the motion for a vote, and then we'll have that discussion. Does anybody disagree with that proposition? Okay, on the annual, I'm sorry, what? Did you say something, somebody? No, okay. All right, relative to the motion that is before us on the approval of the annual report, Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Castillo,
Yes.
Commissioner Klingman,
Yes.
Commissioner McMillan,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay. Motion carries. Thank you for yet another fine piece of work. Now, relative to the discussion, Stuart, since you started it, you get to talk first. How's that?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it might be easiest to just take each of the matters that is mentioned in the annual report and have separate discussions about them.
That's fine.
The first one is the Campaign Reporting Act. And my question to Jeremy and Amelia about that is, I saw the letter that was written, I think it was to both Senator Worth and Representative McQueen, and copying a number of advocates and interested parties. And I think that's the right way to go. I know that Jeremy has also asked for a meeting with Senator Worth and his chief of staff, Lorraine, and we're waiting to hear back, as I understand it, about that. But I think that's an appropriate strategy. Jeremy, my question about the Campaign Reporting Act amendments is, have you gotten any feedback from anybody about them? Do you have any sense of whether Senator Worth or Representative McQueen or anybody is going to be incorporating your suggested changes into the bill that's introduced? And if they are not incorporated into the bill that's introduced, what is your intention on how to proceed to get the changes recommended adopted?
Well, Chair, Commissioner Bluestone, I haven't seen a bill, and I don't know whether or not the thoughts on amendments to 29.1A will be taken up. The folks at Common Cause have indicated to me that they understand Senator Worth will reintroduce the bill that he introduced 2 years ago that made it through the Senate and through 2 House committees and died on the House floor. And yeah, I'm just I'm hoping that Senator Worth will introduce that bill again, and I know he's a champion of the Campaign Reporting Act, so I expect that he would do so. But in terms of the additions to that bill with respect to the amendments to 29.1A with respect to members' expenditures of their own campaign funds, I just don't know.
And so if the bill gets introduced without the changes you recommended, do you plan to ask for those amendments in some other format, either directly to Senator Worth again in writing or in person, or for anybody else to sponsor amendments to include them?
Well,
how are you planning to to
I think it
proceed?
depends on what the bill is. I think it depends on if the bill includes language amending 29.1A, and I suspect it would. I think the are well aware of Senator Ortiz-Pino's lawsuit and the decision in that suit. And so, I think the place to start is just to see what idea is in the bill. That it
Well, sure.
could be an improvement over the language here.
Okay, so since you haven't seen a bill, you're just saying, let's wait and see what actually gets introduced. And if your suggested changes are not included, you'll just make a judgment then about whether, and if so, how you want to go forward on that.
I think that's the right move. I mean, we thought about this and kind of shopped it around internally, but yeah, there could be other approaches that are even better. So I think we wait.
And have you sent the letter to Representative McQueen also, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, he is on the addressee block.
But you haven't heard anything from him either?
I have from McQueen, not substantively, just that he looks forward to this project.
Okay. Well, at least that's some positive response. Okay. I have some questions about the other bills, but maybe others want to weigh in first on the Campaign Reporting Act, if there's anything at all people want to talk about on that.
Anybody else have something they'd like to add to the Campaign Reporting Act portion of this discussion? Okay, let's move on to the second item. Stuart?
Okay, the lobbying amendments that we've endorsed, both in the past and again, as Amelia described them this year, those have generally been included in bills that Senator Steinborn has introduced. And I'm just wondering, what are the strategy proposals you all are considering on moving the lobbying forward? Are you planning to work with primarily Senator Steinborn again, or would you rather find maybe a House sponsor, and if so, whom, and try to move it through the House first? I'm just wondering what the thoughts are on how to approach providing for more disclosure, which I think is something we've endorsed for years now. And I like the way Amelia described the outline of the proposals, but just wondering what your strategy is on how to move those forward.
On this, I think ideally a bill would start on the House side, and we are trying to find a sponsor, and we are communicating with various incoming House members, some freshmen and some other House members. I was very encouraged by the House last session. They passed the commission's the Governmental Conduct Act bill that the commission worked to put together, and the governor gave a message to that came across to the Senate right after HB 2 in the middle of a 30-day session. So I think the House can be a real engine for government ethics legislation. And so ideally, I'd like to see a bill introduced in the House, and one that Senator Steinborn is also supportive of and can be there to catch it if and when it comes across.
Have you talked to the Speaker's office and gotten any recommendations on sponsors for the House side?
I have spoken with folks associated with the Speaker, and let them know a conversation about who could be potential sponsors.
And have you talked to Senator Steinborn about the approach?
I haven't yet, but I know that one of the House sponsors, or one of the potential House sponsors, is in communication with Senator Steinborn about the bill.
Okay, I think that's all I have on the lobbying one. I don't know if anybody else wants to comment
Well,
on that or not.
let's take a look and see. Anybody else want to pitch in on anything on the Lobbyist Reform Act? Yes,
I just want to make sure I'm understanding with regard to the Campaign Reporting Act, we're relying on Senator Worth to carry this forward, and we'll be working with him to see what we can do to make sure it includes what we need. And then with regard to the Lobbyist Regulation Act, we're going to be a little more proactive and work with a House sponsor to get it through the House, and then with Senator Steinberg to bring it to the finish line. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's fair.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, just a couple of observations, Chair Lang. Jeremy knows this, he knows it better than any of us, I expect, that these changes that we're proposing to statute will be accomplished, if at all, only by increments. And I would agree with Chair Lang's observation that trying to create an independent source of funding, one that's independent of the legislature, is a very long shot. And therefore, I think it probably should not rank as one of our legislative priorities, at least not now. As far as making a plan, I think Jeremy's plan is fine. I mean, the agenda going into the session, I mean, we need to have a plan. Mike Tyson observed, of course, everyone has a plan going into the fight, and then you get punched. And that's how it is with legislation. Yeah, of course, we'll have a plan, and then it won't work. So we will have to accept compromises and suggestions, and we'll have to delete portions of our desires, and we will hope to accomplish some small part of our agenda. And Jeremy knows that very well. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. That was very well stated, Commissioner McMillan. Anybody else? Okay. What's door number 3, Stuart?
Well, it's kind of a lead or follow-up from what Commissioner McMillan just said, and that is that I know Commissioner McMillan was very helpful in lobbying last year, and I know that you, Mr. Chair, and some of us all have contacts with different legislators and relationships, and I just want to recommend again that Jeremy consider using commissioners as aides and assistants in any way that we can be to help move forward on these proposals that we've endorsed as a commission. And I think we're all potentially good resources for Jeremy, Amelia, whomever is over physically lobbying to contact folks, and even emails can make a difference, or texts to legislators we know and things like that. I know that in the annual report, we also included, as I had requested before, that we once again endorse a series of amendments to the Financial Disclosure Act. And I was pleased that was included. I think that we as a commission have talked about the need to have better disclosures from public officials so that the public can know about different interests that legislators and others have from their involvements financially and otherwise. And there was a Disclose Act that was introduced last year that and I know Jeremy was very familiar with and worked on. And it had a number of positive amendments, but it also had some problems with it. And in our annual report, we try to address at least what we understood to be the major problems in disclosures that lawyers and others would have to make about their clients, and in disclosures on the amounts of money that people have invested in different funds. And I think that we've come up with some good recommendations there. But I don't know whether there will be a Disclose Act reintroduced. 2 of the 3 prime sponsors in the bill 2 years ago are returning legislators, House members. I think it's Representatives Figueroa and Sariñana. But the senator who was the prime sponsor, Senator Tallman, is not returning to the legislature. So I don't know if the bill will be introduced. I know Jeremy doesn't think it's worth a lot of that is his and staff's time and energy to push it forward. But I'm curious if there will be any letter sent to at least the returning prime sponsors to let them know that the commission has endorsed the Disclose Act again to require more financial disclosures and to address some of the problems that at least we were aware of, and see whether there's any interest in that, to at least communicate to legislators who have co-sponsored the bill before, of our interest in supporting those efforts again. And as Representative McMillan says, things go incrementally, and I've seen that myself over many years, but I still think that the interest in promoting more and better disclosures is a good one, and it's in the commission's interest and in the public interest. And so I'm curious about what plans there may be for going forward on the disclosure amendments.
Chair, Commissioner Bluestone, the sponsors were Representative Garrett and Sariñana, not Representative Figueroa, and
Okay.
they are returning to the House. This bill was always really championed by Senator Tallman, who is leaving the legislature, and I think it's a good effort. I think even the Disclosure Act that was introduced 2 years ago is even better than kind of what we're watering down here with respect to client disclosure by attorneys. That's not privileged communications, and those disclosures also can matter for the public. But in terms of the commission's the amount of effort that I think the commission should put into this in terms of working in the roundhouse, this is not one of those incremental bills that Commissioner McMillan described as politically possible. This is more of a kind of banner, and it kind of outlines the commission's comprehensive view on what a gold standard financial disclosure act would be, and the Disclosure Act is that. And and our ethics statutes have deficiencies across the board, and we try year after year to improve them. And I think we have to make choices between which statutes we're going to really focus on in any given legislative session. And I think this upcoming session, the place to focus is on the Campaign Reporting Act and the Lobbyist Disclosure Act. And so I don't have any intention of making outreaches to members about this beyond its inclusion in the commission's annual report. I think if we started making those kinds of outreaches, it diminishes our ability to focus on other pieces of legislation.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me just say, I understand your position. I just respectfully disagree that we shouldn't at least let the returning sponsors know of our views on the Disclose Act and the recommendations that we've made. I don't disagree, and I'm not trying to micromanage in any suggestions what you spend your time and efforts on in the session. But I think that at least communicating what we've done here to the returning co-sponsors is worth doing. But if you don't want to do that, that's obviously your prerogative. But I think it's still a good move for going forward.
Thank you. Anybody else on this particular item? Okay. Unless I'm missing something, I think we are full circle with our discussion on the annual report. It has been approved in its penultimate form, subject to blanks being filled in. So with that, we will move on to item number 5, Advisory Opinion 2024-06. Casey?
Hi, good morning, Chair, Commissioners.
Morning.
Advisory opinion 2024-06, which is in front of you for consideration today, concerns Article 9, Section 14 of the New Mexico Constitution, commonly known as the Anti-Donation Clause. The question here, the Indian Affairs Department was appropriated money by the legislature for the support of Indigenous centers throughout the state. The Indigenous centers are run by nonprofit organizations. Their purpose is to provide food and clothing for individuals in need. They provide resources for housing, healthcare, behavioral health services, again, for individuals who need that. The department is interested in providing the funding that's been appropriated to them through professional services contracts or like a memorandum of understanding or agreement. And their question here is whether or not that sort of an agreement would violate the anti-donation clause. And the answer is that these agreements would not violate the anti-donation clause for one of two reasons. Either the agreement is a contract, it's one that the department receives sufficient consideration, that it receives something of value in exchange for the provision of funds, such that it is not a donation at all, or because it meets the first exception to the anti-donation clause, which is providing for the care and maintenance of sick or individuals. And so to dig into this a little bit more, the first question under the anti-donation clause, where the transfer of funds at issue is a donation rather than a pledge of credit, is whether or not it's a donation. And the courts have looked to the law around contracts to determine whether or not a governmental entity receives something of value. That where the government receives something in exchange for the provision of funds, it's not actually a donation, and the anti-donation clause is therefore not implicated. Here, the department has indicated that it previously has entered into these sorts of agreements. They require recipients to submit periodic invoices for reimbursement. They are required to meet a scope of work to provide information on how the services and costs expended are meeting their scope of work, and they're required to meet general reporting requirements. So certain courts have looked at government contract or government grant agreements, and I think that this could fairly be considered a grant agreement, really. And they've determined that where certain factors are met, these are actually contracts. And so the factors they look at, the performance of a specific project the government desires, prudent management of the funds, satisfaction of conditions required by the grant award instrument, including reports to the government on the use of funds. And so if the department enters into contracts where they receive something of value, where they meet these factors, then this doesn't bring it into the realm of the anti-donation clause because it's a contract. If the agreements don't contain sufficient consideration, they likely are nonetheless acceptable under the anti-donation clause because they would fall under the first exception, which, as I said, the care and maintenance of sick or indigent persons. The list of services that these centers provide are really geared towards individuals who are experiencing financial hardship or who are in need of medical services. And so where that's the case, if the agreements that the department enters into ensure that the funds are being used for those purposes, then the funds would meet the first exception to the anti-donation clause. And so that would be the conclusion, is that the grants, these agreements would not violate the anti-donation clause, either because there's consideration or because they meet a valid exception. And with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Casey. Motion and a second to approve the advisory opinion.
Moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, Mr. Baker?
No, other than Casey, a typical excellent analysis. Thank you.
Right, thanks. Mr. Bluestone, anything?
No, I agree with Jeff. Well done, Casey.
All right, rather than move around and hear all those encomiums, not that you shouldn't hear all of them, Casey, because you're well deserving of them, but does anybody have anything they wish to add or ask Casey about? Okay, hearing nothing, there's a motion and a second before us to adopt the advisory opinion as presented. Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Castillo,
Yes,
Commissioner Klingman,
Yes.
Commissioner McMillan,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Thank you. And again, great job, Casey. We're used to that, but we shouldn't be so jaded as to not thank you for it every time. All right. I will now seek a motion in a second to go into executive session pursuant to section 1015(1) H3 and 1015(1) H7 to discuss matters identified in sections 6 and let's see, 6 and 7 and 8 on the agenda. Is there such a motion and is there such a second?
so
So
moved.
moved.
All right, Commissioner Commissioner Baker,
I approve the settlement in NP.
no.
Well,
no, we're
We're
just-
approving the motion to
Oh,
go into closed session.
sorry, I'm trying to jump to the very end.
That's okay.
I vote yes.
All right, thank you. Well, I'll have you be the closure guide today. Commissioner Bluestone?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Castillo?
Yes.
Commissioner Klingman?
Yes.
Commissioner McMillan?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, let's let the wizards do their magic and put us into closed session. Join the breakout room, please.
Judge Klingman. Okay, never mind. Hi, Celia. Is everyone coming out of session, or do I need to send you back into the breakout room?
You can't hear me. I can't be part of the discussion they're having right now, so that's why I'm here in open session waiting for them to return. But they are still discussing.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay?
Great.
Okay. Let's see, we are one shy. Looks like we're all here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, let us go back on record. And I will state for the record that the matters discussed in the closed meeting were limited only to those specified in the motion for closure pursuant to 10:15:1J. Okay, back in open session. Becky, item number 6.
Commissioner Chair, in CISL, in 2024 NP04 NRA Commission CISL, staff seeks approval of the settlement agreement with an addendum that the educational component be extended to be taken 12 months into the probation.
All right, is there a motion and a second?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Any discussion? All right, if not, Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Castillo,
Yes.
Mr. Klingman,
Yes.
Commissioner McMillan,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva. Judy, you're muted, Judy. I saw the yes. Thank you. Thumbs up from down south. Okay, and chair votes yes, motion carries. Thank you. The settlement is approved. 6B.
INRI, the Commission of Arambula, 2024 NP11, staff seeks issuance or approval and issuance of the default order.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Castillo,
Yes.
Commissioner Klingman,
Yes.
Commissioner McMillan,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Yes.
and chair votes yes, motion carries. The matter, let the default order issue. And item C, Rebecca?
INRI, the Commission of Stubs, 2024 NP12, staff seeks dismissal of the complaint.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Castillo,
Yes.
Commissioner Klingman,
Yes.
Commissioner McMillan,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva. Judy?
Still muted, Judy.
Oh, no, I don't know if she is or not. I can't tell. Give me a thumbs up. That girl. Okay, Commissioner Villanueva votes yes, chair votes yes. Thank you, Becky, for your good work as usual. Items number 7, Walker and Jessica, I assume you have those divvied up.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, members of the Commission, as to administrative complaint number 2024-06, Commission staff is recommending and seeking approval of settlement agreement.
Thank you. Motion in a second.
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved and seconded to approve the settlement agreement as set forth by council. Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Castillo,
Yes.
Mr. Klingman,
Yes.
Commissioner McMillan,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. The settlement is agreed to. Next matter.
Chair, members of the Commission, as to 2024-36, Commission staff respectfully request an additional 90-day extension to continue investigation in this matter.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Castillo,
Yes.
Commissioner Klingman,
Yes.
Commissioner McMillan,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Thank you. All right, next.
Chair and Commissioners, the Commission staff seek your vote approving the settlement agreement between the General Counsel and the respondent in administrative complaint number 2024-37.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay. Second? I didn't hear one. Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Castillo,
Yes,
Commissioner Klingman,
Yeah.
Commissioner McMillan,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. The
Thank-
motion carries. Next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm seeking a motion approving the settlement agreement between the General Counsel and the respondent in the administrative complaint numbered 2024-40.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second?
so move.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Castillo,
Yes,
Commissioner Klingman,
Yes.
Mr. McMillan,
Yes.
Mr. Villanueva,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. Motion carries. Settlement's approved. Next.
Chair Lang, members of the commission, as to the remaining cases before you, save for 2024, well, for the remaining cases, commission staff is recommending, except for 2024-78, commission staff is seeking an order of dismissal for lack of personal jurisdiction or voluntary compliance for by the Secretary of State's office.
Okay. Is there a motion and a second?
So
Oh,
moved.
does this include 2024-76 Keller v. Heinrich?
Oh, that you're, sorry, Your Honor, and that's correct. As to
It does, and I will note that on that matter.
recused.
Let's segregate that one out, Jessica, just to be,
Sure, I'm happy to go through all of them individually. I've received sort of,
and that's okay. Just leave H and J out of them, okay?
okay, Chair Lang and members of the commission, as to items E through M, save for K and J, commission staff respectfully seek an order of dismissal for lack of personal jurisdiction.
I
or for
believe you mean H and J.
H and J, excuse me, for lack of jurisdiction or for voluntary compliance from the Secretary of State's office.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Castillo,
Yes,
Commissioner Klingman,
Yes.
Commissioner McMillan,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. All right. Let's take up the matter of 7H, which is administrative complaint number 2024-76, from which Commissioner Castillo, you are recusing, correct?
correct.
Okay. Jessica,
Chair, members of the commission staff are seeking a dismissal for lack of jurisdiction in 2024-76.
thank you. Is there a motion, a second?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Castillo is recused.
Yes, I
Commissioner
recuse.
Commissioner Klingman
Yes.
and Commissioner McMillan,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. Thank you. Now, Jeremy or Walker, I guess you're going to take up J.
I can do it, Chair. On this particular administrative matter, the staff are seeking an order referring this administrative case to the New Mexico Department of Justice.
Thank you. Is there a motion, a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Castillo,
Yes,
Commissioner Klingman,
Yes.
Commissioner McMillan,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you. The next item is number 8. Mr. Woods.
I'm going to refer that to Jeremy to make the motion.
Okay, thank you, Connor. So, Chair Commissioners, on this item, the staff are seeking authorization for the filing of a civil action, including authorizations to send a demand letter and enter into a settlement agreement, as against officials in Luna County, for violations of the Procurement Code and the Governmental Conduct Act, and as against the Greater Luna County Economic Development Council Incorporated for violations of the Procurement Code, and as against Christy Ann Harvey for violations of the Governmental Conduct Act and the Procurement Code.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Castillo,
Yes.
Commissioner Klingman,
Yes.
Commissioner McMillan,
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Motion carries. All right. Where are we? I seem to have lost my place. Oh, there we are. We are on the general agenda item number 11, correct?
12, and I think we're discussing the next meeting, Chair.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm looking at. Oh, 11 was the authorization. Yeah, I got my agendas mixed up here and they have different numbers. Sorry about that. The next meeting, somebody has a calendar and they've already looked to see when February Fridays fall, correct?
First Friday looks to be Friday, February 7th.
Okay. Anybody have an issue with us meeting on that date? Okay. Then unless change down the road, if there's a legislative reason that we get pulled away or some other magic moment, then our next meeting is set for February 7th. Before we go into public comment, I just want to make a couple of points, one of which several of us had the good fortune of attending the ceremony last Friday at the Capitol, wherein Jeremy was honored, rightfully so, as the Public Lawyer of the Year by his peers in the bar. It was a very warm and wonderful event, and my wife and I attended along with Celia and her husband, and there were a number of other folks there. It was really a great moment, and Jeremy handled it with his usual dignity and aplomb, and we're all grateful again for your service. Thanks, Jeremy. It was a good reception.
Well, thank you, and thank you for coming.
You bet. And also, Walker, I think this is probably your last meeting with us, unless things change in the next couple of weeks, which A, I hope they do, and B, I hope they don't. But your services have been above and beyond what any of us could have hoped for and expected. And but I guess if we knew you better, we would have expected what we've gotten. But we didn't at the time. We will miss you. I'll pass it around the room because it shouldn't go without saying that you've been an invaluable asset. And as the second hire, actually Jeremy's first, we're grateful for his good eye and ear, and we will miss you. And Godspeed in your next adventure to you and your family. Jeff, I'm assuming you would like to hop in on that.
Yeah, I just want to make a suggestion, because Jeremy's going to have to hire your replacement, Walker, and I would suggest that you leave a pair of your shoes in your office so that Jeremy will know whose feet will actually fit your shoes. And with that, Godspeed.
Thank you. Stuart?
Just want to say thank you again, Walker, for all your outstanding work. It's really been very much appreciated and respected. And I know you'll do a great job. And what I understand, being in Santa Fe County, I may get a chance to see you in the future as well. And I look forward to that.
Thank you. Celia?
Walker, it's been a real pleasure working with you. I'm always so proud when I see you work because it's done in such an outstanding way. I too wish you luck in your next endeavor, and since it's good to be here in Santa Fe, hope to see you more often. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Might be crashing on your couch, Celia.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you, Celia. Commissioner Klingman?
Walker, I'm the newbie on the group, but I'm very impressed with what I've seen. You'll do well at your new job. Thank you for your service at the commission.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge.
Commissioner McMillan?
Godspeed, Walker. As I mentioned in our private communication, we'll be missed. I hope your replacement will be able to perform at the level that you have done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Commissioner Villanueva?
Walker, I want to say how much I appreciate and respect not only the way you performed the mechanics of your job, but how you filled the role of general counsel, how you carried yourself, the way you represented the SEC, and especially for the times you stood in the clutch when Jeremy wasn't there. I knew some of those times must have been very difficult for you. Godspeed to you, Walker.
Thank you. And especially, it should not go without saying that Walker was here on the day of the infamous invasion of space and handled it maturely and respectfully, and that cannot have been easy. But anyway, we will all miss you, and do your best.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. I know that Jeremy is good at finding talent, and I'm sure that my replacement will fit into my shoes, but may not share my same fashion sense. So I won't begrudge them if they don't. And yeah, it's been a real pleasure working with you all. We've been, it's been one of the signpost moments in my career to get the opportunity to build a state agency from the ground up, and couldn't have asked for a better set of commissioners. I think having a mix of some lawyers and non-lawyers has really been just wonderful for the commission's ability to pursue its overall goals of improving the quality of state government without having a kind of hidebound legal positivist view of what it should be doing. And so, I think that the commission is well set up for future success, and I'm glad to have been played a role in getting the commission to where it is now. And I thank you all for your kind words, and I will stay in touch with you all.
Thanks, Walker. Thank you. Thanks so much. All right, public comments. Whoever's running that machine today, if you want to invite public comment, anybody in the public out there want to?
Yes, if you'd like to make a public comment, please come off mute, start your camera if you'd like, and we will provide 2 to 3 minutes for public comment now.
Thank you, Amelia. Anyone?
Hello. Yes.
And would you please identify yourself?
Yes. My name is Ramona Goolsby.
Thank you.
Thank you. I wrote down good morning, but I think I'll change it to good afternoon. Chair Lang, commissioners, and staff. First, congratulations, Jeremy, on the award. And I'm going to share your sentiments on missing Mr. Boyd. He's been very helpful to the public. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. In a state where we often find ourselves grappling with a moral and ethical vacuum, the work of the New Mexico Ethics Commission stands as a vital counterweight, a beacon of accountability, integrity, and justice. Because of the diligent work of this commission and its staff, we are beginning to see a shift. Many state officers and employees are now recognizing the importance of adhering to laws and principles that underpin ethical governance. Your efforts send a clear message that accountability is not optional and justice is not negotiated. To support and expand your essential mission, I have drafted and provided to Mr. Boyd a sample of legislation that would enhance your investigative powers and provide much needed support for those who come forward with concerns but are told the commission lacks jurisdiction. The proposal would require that if a complaint falls outside your purview, the filer would be informed of the agency with proper jurisdiction and the complaint forwarded accordingly. Such a measure would prevent legitimate concerns from falling through the cracks and encourage greater public trust. Your role is not only to enforce laws, but to serve as a light in the darkness, a moral compass for New Mexico. You are tasked with restoring faith in our institutions and offering a path forward for justice and ethical governance. I encourage you to embrace the responsibility with boldness, knowing that the work you do makes a real difference in the lives of New Mexicans. Thank you for your dedication to this critical mission and for your time today.
Thank you very much, Ms. Goolsby. Anyone else? Amelia, you got any other takers?
Yes, it looks
Please
like.
identify yourself. Thank you. Please
Go.
identify yourself for the record.
Yes, Clifford Reese, a retired public health attorney in Santa Fe, an appointed member of the Santa Fe County Ethics Board. I wanted to commend the commission for the high quality of work that it's performed since it began in July of 2019. New Mexico is very fortunate to have you, and echo the sentiments that have been expressed by the chair and others about Jeremy's well-deserved award as Public Lawyer of the Year. I was privileged to be there last Friday with you to join that celebration, and also to welcome Walker to Santa Fe County. We're delighted to have someone of his expertise and quality to be part of our efforts at the local level concerning government ethics. So I want to thank all of you, the commissioners and the staff, for the great job that you have done. Very proud to have you representing New Mexico. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Anyone else, Amelia?
No, Chair.
Thanks very much. All right. We are a wrap, as they say, and wishing all of you a happy and safe holiday season. And we'll see most of you on February 7th, if not before. Thanks, everybody. Be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Happy holidays and